Hello, welcome back to Vietnam Real Estate Insights, the program that discusses the Vietnamese real estate market and the emerging trends with industry experts. I'm your host, Harlow Russell. Today on Vietnam Real Estate Insights, I'm very thrilled to have Oliver Massmann, the General Director of Duane Morris Vietnam, with us to talk about the investment opportunities and challenges of putting your money into the Vietnamese property market. So let me give you a little bit of brief background about Oliver. First of all, he's a figure in the Vietnamese business community. He's been here more than 20 years, also has spent more than 5 years in Myanmar, focused on that market as well, and he is on the board of many organizations here, including the supervisory board of Petro Vietnam. He's on the board of Eurocham, on the board of the German Business Association. He's an adjunct professor at the Foreign Trade University in Hanoi. And earlier this month, Oliver was the very first foreigner to address the members of the National Assembly of Vietnam in Vietnamese. Quite an honor and quite an accomplishment. So I'm very happy to have you here today, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Hello. Thank you very much. I feel very honored to be here.
Well, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy. So our viewers are mostly outside of Vietnam. They probably have not heard of Duane Morris before and are not familiar with Vietnam. That's why they're watching the program. So could you give us a little bit of background about Duane Morris and its history and what it does in Vietnam?
Duane Morris LLP is the oldest U.S. law firm, over 100 years old. It's a full-service law firm with more than 700 attorneys from 24 offices in the United States and internationally. It offers innovative solutions to the legal and business challenges presented by today's evolving global markets. Over the past century, Duane Morris has fostered a very collegial structure and culture where lawyers cooperate to better serve their clients, and they really cooperate. Lawyers who are leaders in a range of legal disciplines here with diverse backgrounds to join Duane Morris in order to have access to the latest technology, professional support staff, and other resources in pursuit of clients' goals. Duane Morris' establishment of its offices in Vietnam's capital Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City is indicative for the firm's dedication to its clients' demands in Southeast Asia, especially those with operations or investments in Vietnam, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We have focused on infrastructure investment and also on energy, power, real estate investment, and renewable energy, which will be the future. We recently represent clients in 4 renewable energy projects here: biomass, 2 solar projects, and 2 wind energy projects. We now currently negotiate 4 power purchase agreements with the Electricity Vietnam, and we hope to get that done soon and to really make a dent into Vietnam's renewable energy investment.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Focusing on the real estate portion of what you do, how does Duane Morris define for foreign investors coming in who say, I want to invest in real estate? How do you give the general overview of the real estate market for investors in Vietnam?
Thank you very much, Harlow, for this question. First, let me give you the macro view, the general view.
Yes.
Why is Vietnam so special? Vietnam has the most liberalized market access service sector commitments under the WTO and is signatory to the EU Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. In the real estate sector, there is no country in Asia now that has a more liberalized market access than Vietnam. If you're married, for example, to a Vietnamese, you can own land and houses here freehold basis. There is no other country in Asia that allows that one.
Wow, that's quite a distinction.
Yes.
It's quite a distinction.
Vietnam's property market is heating up now thanks to the growing middle class, to the liberalization, rising wages, a rapid urbanization after almost 5 years of a housing slump. But the crucial factor is the recently applied housing law and the law on real estate business. The country is now considered to be one of the prime real estate investment locations in the world. If you are a foreigner, just on a tourist visa here, yes, you can own land and houses on a 50-year land use right basis.
Right, you don't need any other permit other than a stamp in your passport.
Exactly. The real estate market is growing quite fast as a result of Vietnam's domestic growth story and progress in restructuring the economy. From the north to the south, there seems to be construction underway everywhere. Vietnam has risen in the global mergers and acquisitions market in 2015, and the acceleration of this trend is expected to be seen in 2016. Vietnam is the country currently in Southeast Asia with the highest GDP growth.
Yes, it's about 6 to 7%?
6.97%.
Yes, so it has surpassed China, yes, which is usually what's the benchmark. Well, given all of that, engine of growth, your expertise on TPP and the European agreements particularly, all of this is very positive. However, at the same time, in Vietnam, went through at least 2 bubbles in real estate in recent times, in about 2007-8, and then again in 11-12. So, as you said, things are heating up here, particularly in residential property. Even as we look outside the window here, there's 3 buildings under construction. Could it be the beginning of another bubble again? Is that possible? Or if not, how will that be avoided this time?
Of course, nobody can exclude another bubble. But the Vietnamese, I think, went through a learning curve and have learned their lessons. In the past, was before WTO accession in 2007 and short after WTO accession, the Vietnamese became very much complacent. And the expectation, especially regarding prices in the real estate market, went through the roofs. And basically then that caused a stagnation in the real estate market. Real estate was overpriced in those days. And because of these unrealistic expectations, Vietnam in 2007 was suddenly member of the World Trade Organization. Everybody from the outside world looked on Vietnam and said, this is the place to be. And the Vietnamese, of course, are very pragmatic. You call that "thuc dụng" in Vietnamese, and they said, okay, let's make use of it. Let's increase without limit. And that was a problem. Now Vietnam, after 9 years of accession to the WTO, has learned its lesson. It became not complacent anymore. It became more realistic, let me say. And the level of pragmatism is always very, very surprising. When I met the former Minister of Natural Resources and Environment in my position as chairman of the Legal Sector Committee of EuroCham about 6 years ago, he asked me, Oliver, what could we do to basically improve the real estate market investment situation?
Yes.
And I said, you could open it to foreign investment. And he said, okay, now via EuroCham, give us position papers how to do that. So we did that. We submitted position papers how to open the market. The Vietnamese are the most pragmatic people in Asia. They copy-pasted our position papers and opened the market without limitation. And I think that is a sign how the Vietnamese learn from their mistakes in the past.
But with that pragmatism, are there other specific controls in place to make sure that a bubble doesn't happen again? Have there been any particular rules or laws or functions that have been created in the last few years that you would say are a good sign to show that things won't get out of control again?
Let me say it like that. The real estate market very much depends on expectations.
Yes.
The Vietnamese try to limit unrealistic expectations by law. They try to put ceilings on rates, on leases, and they try to push very much the construction of office buildings, for example, here, to create competition. Competition regulates the prices.
Certainly.
And if you see that now in Saigon, for example, we are sitting here in front of this famous Bitexco Tower.
Yes.
Yeah? One of the most famous office buildings here. If you rent there a room, an office basically, that is one of the most reasonable prices in whole Asia now. Yes. So the Vietnamese came back to a more realistic approach. Okay. They opened the market to foreign investment. Foreign investors came in, they built office buildings, they built, let me say also the Deutsche Haus now, Deutsches Haus in Leeuwarden, yes. Where I made the contracts for Angela Merkel and Nguyen Thanh Dung to sign, 2011, is now in construction. And they're very much focusing on reasonable office rents, but with a high level of construction. The Deutsches Haus in Saigon will be one of the first green energy efficient buildings in whole Vietnam with a level of a German green energy building in Germany. Wow. So my bottom line here is that the Vietnamese try to increase the quality of office building, tried also to introduce energy efficient structures, and kept the level of the prices relatively stable. This is a way to create very attractive investment and very attractive lessons.
I see. So Oliver, for our audience that's out there, with many choices as a global investor, you can put your money and buy residential property in developed countries, in developing countries, and many choices. Why should they put Vietnam on their buying radar screen right now?
Legal certainty, I think for me, for example, if I would buy a house, is very, very critical, very, very important. Legal certainty. Vietnam has one of the highest levels of legal certainty through international integration because it signed trade pacts where it committed to levels of legal certainty never achieved. And ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a surprise. In some commercial sectors, in case the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and the FTA between Europe and Vietnam will be ratified, Vietnam will have a higher level of legal certainty than Germany.
Really?
Yes. I can prove that. And in my presentation to the National Assembly of Vietnam, I made that point. And I got standing ovations. Of course, I can prove that. The level of international integration, the level of legal certainty in the sector government procurement agreement and ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement Body, to enforce foreign investors' interest in the real estate sector is higher currently than under German law. If the Vietnamese implement the TPP in time, implementation is the key issue, of course. There's one if. But if they do that, they have accepted ISDS principles. And
what is ISDS?
Investor State Dispute Settlement Body and Enforcement Offshore Vietnam.
So disputes could be or would be settled offshore, not just here.
So nobody needs to rely on the Vietnamese court, judge, or anything arbitration system. It could be very unbiased, and so creates a very unprecedented level of legal certainty.
And this is part of TPP or the European?
Both. So either or, if the FTA, the Free Trade Agreement, will be ratified, this is nearly 100% sure. It's only a question of time. Roughly, let me give you a timeline. It could be will be latest ratified in 2018, could also be end of 2017. So we have 1 year. And the TPP latest could be ratified 2018. But ladies and gentlemen, let me give you one thing you can take out of this interview, which is very important for you if you invest into Vietnam. You have a window now of the next 2 years, because from now on, until the ratification of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and the EU Free Trade Agreement, that is your window to invest in the real estate sector in Vietnam. If you come later, after the ratification, everybody knows how good it is, and that will be probably too late.
Wow. Well, with that said, let me play a little bit of devil's advocate, because that's very positive and a 2-year window to really, take opportunity here. But it's not perfect, and in every market there are risks. So in Vietnam today, given what you've said, Oliver, what are some of the risks that still our viewers need to consider when they're looking at buying in Vietnam? What are some of the gotchas that are still here or will be here? How would you frame that for our audience?
Thank you very much, Harlo. Of course, there are always risks coming with your transaction if you want to invest in the real estate sector. But let me make one point. If you do your homework well and you do your due diligence well, and for example, you hire proper advisors on that, let me say lawyers, of course you think now, yes, Oliver Massmann will say you need good lawyers. Yes, of course, but let me tell you this, the real estate agencies and the real estate developers here have their own interests. You can't blame them for that. But if you only work with them in that transactions, you might miss critical points. I have currently, for example, a client who wanted to invest in an apartment building. He is a foreigner. Although he is married to a Vietnamese, there is one critical rule you have to consider. The rule that only 30% of this specific apartment building are open to foreign investments. But if the limit is already achieved, basically you can't own anymore on foreigner's name. So, but if you still then try and invest, you run into troubles. Do your homework, first thing. Hire a professional international lawyer, because only international lawyers have a professional liability insurance you can really rely on. Listen to me, this is very important, and let them do the due diligence for you. If you do that, you can only be successful.
Okay. Well, quick question from a legal standpoint for a foreign investor, for our audience. Is there any particular differences in wanting to invest or buy residential property versus, say, commercial property? Is it relatively the same, or is it radically different in Vietnam?
There is legally not a very huge difference. But of course, if you, for example, it depends on your intention. If you, let me start with residential area. If you intend to invest in residential area, you should make sure that you, as the owner later of a residential apartment building, if you, for example, buy a whole building, you have the right to sublease this. Otherwise, you have this building and you can't sublease. This is one critical point for residential area. For commercial area, another critical point is do your due diligence on the so-called Red Book. The Red Book is the Bible for real estate in Vietnam. It is defines your right and title to the building and the land. And in that red book, there is a purpose of use stated.
Yes.
So if you want to use it for commercial purpose, you must be absolutely sure that this is defined at the beginning before you invest into that in that red book, because it can take you ages after you have bought the building, for example, and you want to change it to commercial purpose. Yeah, you might not even be able to do that. So that is a very critical issue for commercial use. Make sure that the red book, this is in Vietnamese is called, remember that, sổ đỏ. If that red book defines the purpose correctly in accordance with your own business lines.
Now I've heard the phrase pink book. Is that the same?
Thank you very much. It's a great question. The pink book defines your right to the condominium, not to the land and the house. So the pink book defines basically all your rights if you have bought an apartment. Yeah? So that is the difference. The pink book, so hom, yeah, in Vietnamese, defines your right if you're an owner of an apartment.
I see. Okay, very good. Now, another interesting question, since you've seen the landscape change here so much in your 20 years here, what do you see right now as the differences between local developers, Vietnamese developers, and the international developers who are creating residential and commercial buildings for investors? Is there a big difference still? Or is that gap closing? Or any other thoughts for our foreign audience on that question, local developer versus foreign developer?
I would say the major difference between local developers and foreign developers is quality of construction. You see that with the foreign developers, let me give you once more the example, which is the golden example here, the Deutsches Haus here in Saigon on the Le Van Hue Street, number 3. The Deutsches Haus is built according to the highest standards in Germany. Yeah? And it is a green, efficient, energy efficient building. Now, to achieve this level, the amount of investment that goes into construction is probably, let me say, roughly 5 times more than a local investor would use to build the same building. So this is a major difference. Now if you would be an investor in local developers, buildings, houses, or in international developers, I would check on that very carefully, because what defines the costs of a building over 100 years, for example, or 50 years of operation? What defines the cost of a building? And I tell you now, 80% roughly of the costs of the operations of a building for over 50 years are energy costs. Yes. So, your key consideration if you would like to invest into Vietnam should be this level of energy efficiency. Local developers, I don't blame them for this. They just don't have this level of experience yet. Surely they will achieve this level of experience and take care of their buildings, but not now. So if you see the old buildings and the new buildings here now, locally developed, they don't recognize that so much. So you don't have this energy efficient standard. And you think local developed buildings are cheaper at the beginning? Now think again. Because if you compare them with internationally developed buildings, and then you do the 50-year calculation, then you end up to have the local building more expensive than the internationally developed building, although the entry price for the international building is higher. But please do your math. And then you will end up and see that now currently internationally developed buildings, which basically incorporate green and energy efficiency standards are cheaper.
Well, all of this comes back to what we've said time and time again, which is to do your homework and do your homework well. One last question. Oliver, you live in Hanoi. So let me ask you, is there any particular difference from your perspective for an international investor considering purchase of, let's say, the same type of property in Ho Chi Minh versus Hanoi?
Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, is the commercial hub. But I would say it's a little bit overhyped now. And the real chances for good, reasonable and very high value investment are, let me say it like this, more, I would say, in the north now than in the south. There is an oversupply of office buildings here now, for example. There's also an oversupply of apartment buildings here now. Of course, that creates a competition situation. Yes, in Saigon you might end up with a better investment in real estate, in apartments. Yes, but I would say the developed situation in the south is not so progressed, and the business opportunities in the north basically are higher now than in the south, because Saigon is a commercial hub. Everybody's watching on the commercial hub, and so basically that creates this situation, the special situation why if you talk to investors, huge investors, they prefer now to go to either more north, Da Nang, for example, or right away into the north. I give one example, Samsung. Samsung has its largest mobile phone and tablet factory in the north, about 80 kilometers from Hanoi. That's Samsung's worldwide largest tablet and mobile factory, and there is a reason why they went to the north and not to the south.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Thanks for that. So that concludes our interview today with Oliver Massmann, the General Director of Duane Morris Vietnam. Oliver, thanks so much for your time and your expertise. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming down from Hanoi for this.
Thank you very much, Harlow. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation today, wherever you are around the world. Please click on the other interviews in the series of Vietnam Real Estate Insights online, and as we talk about the market opportunities every month. I'm your host, Harlow Russell. Thanks, and have a good day wherever you are.